Is Google proving the Stadia haters and the press correct? More on that soon for the podcast. But not only that, is Tesla in deep trouble right now from their more recent innovations and older ones? Well, let's find out tonight on the Tech Summit podcast. My name is Francisco, and I actually have Christopher on the line over here joining me for episode number 24 of the Tech Summit podcast. And he wasn't able to make it into the studio tonight because of some weather conditions that are actually making travel very difficult. So say hello, Christopher.
Hello, we are completely snowed in over here on New York.
Ex-
I'm not sure if anyone here has heard. There is a nor'easter going on across the country. Of
yeah, and it's definitely hit us pretty hard. A lot of snow shoveling over in my area. I'm sure the same has been the case in yours.
course.
Yeah. But with that said, I have some very, very sad news and a little bit of a rant coming up. So essentially, Google is shutting down the first party Stadia studios in Montreal and in LA. Reasons for that, I'm actually not entirely sure as for the reasons, though they have to be financial at this point, just considering, that Stadia wasn't exactly their biggest moneymaker by any means. And this is actually sad news for me because with all of this comes a lot of pretty negative stuff coming up. Things like, for instance, Stadia isn't really going to have those specialty games that we were promised. Even though I wasn't like an avid Stadia user by any means, I was still, a fan of Stadia. I wanted Stadia to succeed, and I went from seeing how horribly the launch went to I had a Founders Edition kit, so I was definitely one of the first people to play in Google Stadia with the proper kit. But not only that, I saw them improve to where they are today, where they're able to sustain a pretty solid connection between their servers and your Chromecast or your web browser, whatever device it is that you're using to play your Stadia games. And considering that I've seen just how much they have improved from then to now, I think that a lot of the issues here, when it comes to the fan base or anything like that, has to do also with a lot of the over promises that they made at around the launch, and even like before that, they did hype up the platform quite a bit, and we didn't get a lot of those features at launch, which was very disappointing to all of us. And now we are saying that they are going to shut down the first party studios. They are also going to keep up the service. So it's not like we've lost the service by any means. People who are still into Stadia will still be gaming on it. But a lot of people are starting to see the writing on the wall here. Like, does this mean that this is just going to be another Google service that ends up getting axed out like a lot of other services happen?
Yeah, I absolutely think it is. So one of the things that has come out of this news is a lot of people coming out of the woodwork to be very like "I told you so" ish about
Yes.
this stuff, and I don't want to be "I told you so" myself, especially because I don't really take joy in Stadia possibly sunsetting in the same way that I wouldn't really have cared either way if it succeeded. I'm not a Stadia user. This cloud gaming stuff has no real use to me. We've discussed that in the past.
Right.
Um, with that said, though, there's a reason why there's an entire website dedicated to just documenting all of the services that Google has sunsetted and acts early on in its own little thing.
I think we also talked
Um,
about that before. It's quite
yeah,
a
no,
lot.
it's a very extensive list, and so like Stadia getting sunsetted like this is not really a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Um, I am a little surprised that it's happening this soon. I thought it would have maybe hung on for another year or so. And of course, I'm talking speculative. Like you said, Stadia as a service is going to continue,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the fact that they are axing their studios and sort of like seemingly winding down on exactly how Stadia operates and how much they're advertising it as well does kind of come off a little bit like they're going to wind down and eventually end the service within the next year or two.
Yeah, which is very unfortunate for sure. And now I also expected this to happen because it is Google. If something isn't a wild success right out of the bat, like let's say their first Google Pixel phone, which so many people loved, I mean, it's probably not going to stay for much longer. Google is not really the type of company to support their projects in the long term. If it's not making them a ton of money now, they're probably going to axe it. And while I understand that perspective or that way of going about things, because as a company, you don't want to lose money. You don't want to have to constantly compensate for the expenses or the cost of sustaining a service just for the sake of having it up. And it may be getting a lot better over time, but I think that Stadia had the biggest potential of them all if they had only handled things a little bit differently. Because there were a lot of good things about the service. Like they actually, uh, from the last time that I checked, which was quite a while ago, they had a pretty good selection of games, I would say. And not only that, but even though Stadia has nothing really to do with hardware, it is just going to be a Wi-Fi software thing for most people that you can even play on a web browser. Uh, you, you really don't need like your own powerful hardware. However, they still made the Stadia controller, which is still my like one of my favorite controllers of all time. I think that it is a really good controller. It is very nicely weighed, and that potential was just there. It really could have been a really cool platform, and this doesn't mean that it won't be, but now this just kind of makes it very clear to me, and I'm pretty sure to you, that the end of Stadia is very likely coming a lot sooner than you and I both expected, and most certainly than I wanted.
It's like I mentioned in the past, the issue with Stadia, as you mentioned, is that it's very much a internet-based streaming service. And streaming services for things like Netflix or whatever are fine because you talk about video. But when you talk about video games, when you need to have a decent, very good latency, and you don't want to have that input lag in there, it's a huge problem to have to try and excuse me, yeah, it's a very big issue if you have to try and have any kind of internet connection that does not meet the standards for something like that. And there's
Right.
a lot of places in the country and around the world where they do not have the internet speed to really make something like that work. There are many countries out there like South Korea where something like this would flourish perfectly fine. But I think the issue here isn't even that Stadia is a bad idea, but rather that it is ahead of its time. The current the current infrastructure of internet in the United States and other parts of the world just is not able to sustain something like Stadia for anyone other than the niche people in inner cities that can afford high speed internet like that.
Stadia as like your primary platform. I mean, there are people like sometimes in Stadia reviews and Stadia revisions that I've done in the past, people have commented that they use Stadia as their main gaming platform, which has always surprised me because to me, I've always seen cloud gaming as just like an alternative. Like, let's say you don't have your console near you, like you're somewhere else. Well, you can still play your games on the go per se, or just like at someone else's house without having to carry all of that stuff with you. Um,
I
so
know I could see cloud gaming being something of the future. It's just
yeah,
again, we're not ready for it yet. It seems like something that's maybe 10 years from now. Again, it depends on how quickly we can get internet. You know, uh Elon Musk's SpaceX is trying to launch Starlink in the next coming years to sort of provide high-speed satellite internet to rural areas. And trust me, we will get back to one of Elon's companies very soon. But
yes, I was just gonna say
at the
that too.
same time, that's not. First off, it's not exactly realized just yet. So something like this is just not going to work out at the current moment.
Right
At
now,
least
I would say that for the like any company that really has a cloud gaming service right now, it really is just a beta test right now because it's not like the formula is really down packed at the moment because it has to be profitable and it has to be convenient enough that most people could actually use it. That I could even in the much near future start getting a much bigger foothold and being able to actually replace in-house hardware. So that way you're not dealing with like scalping of consoles or anything like that because your games are in the cloud anyway, so it doesn't matter.
So I can't. By the way, I'm gonna posit a theory here.
Okay.
I cannot be the only one who notices the timing of this announcement.
Really?
Yeah, think about when they announced this, February 1st, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, I fully believe that they made this announcement and this decision after realizing that Cyberpunk's release did not bring in more people to Stadia. Because think about it. Cyberpunk was being advertised as a massive game for Stadia. And, depending on who you asked, Stadia was actually the best place to play Cyberpunk because it was so physically demanding on computers
Yeah.
and was just completely unplayable on consoles.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, Stadia was the place to go to play Cyberpunk. But I'm guessing Cyberpunk's release did not lead to an increase in members in the way that Google would have hoped. And it's at that point where they realize, okay, this is not going to work out. Axe the whole thing.
Wow. I actually never made that connection at all. Though I was aware that Cyberpunk was going to come soon to Stadia, and it was just as you said, probably the best place to actually play Cyberpunk at. So
Essentially, it was because Cyberpunk would run just about perfectly. The only thing that you needed was the internet connection. It wasn't like you needed a super strong PC like what I have or what you have, or obviously just to have a wing and a prayer that doesn't crash on a PS4.
yeah,
Stadia, it's just the internet connection. Then you can play Cyberpunk perfectly fine in 4K
right,
if
right.
you're paying for it at least.
Yeah. Even then, like with the free service, which is perfectly serviceable, pun intended. I do think that, that potential was there. Regarding other cloud services like GeForce Now, which has always been great from the moment that I've been able to play games on it. The only thing really there is just that they don't really support that many games that I personally am interested in. Like they don't support any Final Fantasy games on GeForce Now, which means that my entire Steam library that contains all those Final Fantasy games, they're not necessarily being used. However, that doesn't mean that that's the case for all of it, right? Like we've also mentioned xCloud. I almost said Game Pass as usual.
Again,
Yes. I don't think that I'm ever going to grow out of that, but
we're gonna
uh,
have to keep a counter.
yeah, I think we should have like an ownage counter there or something so that we always remember this through the years. But services like that have been doing well, but they also haven't been taking the world by storm, Like the world isn't ready to transition from hardware to cloud gaming just like that. Like it is going to be a very slow transition. But I think that this decade is going to be the one where at the very least from middle to end it is going to be a lot more feasible. Though I just hope that it doesn't tire out like the entire fad of 3D did, because I did want to see that flourish too.
Right. And of course, we're talking about this as if Stadia is in fact dead, which, it isn't yet. It isn't yet. This is definitely not a good sign for it.
Yeah,
But, our Stadia retrospective postmortem will have to wait until again, I say another year,
yeah.
personally.
I'm going to bring in uh some flowers probably to mourn the death of Stadia if that ends up happening. I very much hope that that is not the case, but it is also kind of funny to think of because we all expected this to happen. Um, as sad as it still is, as sad as it makes me as a Stadia supporter.
Of course. I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are actively rooting for Stadia to fail, and then they were having a pretty good time with this. But
Oh yeah. I mean, the only time that you would often see like reports on Stadia is whenever something negative came about that involved Stadia in some way. Like, oh, they're no longer going to have this particular game on Stadia. Oh, oh wow. I mean, it seems like Google just can't maintain this infrastructure. Stadia is just gonna suck and die, and I just don't think that's a fair way of looking at it. And like these people that tried so hard to bring it down are only going to make it worse for people that did genuinely enjoy the service here, I think.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's again, it's not a bad idea. It's just an idea that is ahead of its time.
probably, probably it is out of its time. Though I am glad that it is something that wasn't introduced nonetheless, because it is still a very interesting concept, and I always love to see companies like trying things out like this. And I think that in the future, whether it's Google Stadia or different cloud service, we are going to see this work much more beautifully, especially with the introduction of now 5G being now expanded worldwide, or at the very least to the entirety of the United States, with Verizon putting towers everywhere, same with T-Mobile and companies like that. So yeah, I think that we should see a lot more usage of it. But even then, it may not contribute that much to whether or not it'll succeed.
Yes, right.
Yeah. However, you did have something to say regarding Elon Musk and Tesla, and I am dying to find out what that is. So please go for it.
Ah, yes. Excuse me. I was just looking at something else here because so before we let's sandwich a tiny little thing here
Sure.
between these two news pieces. Uh Apparently the Atari VCS has released.
Really?
Yes,
I
it
had.
has, or at least it has launched to initial backers.
Oh, okay.
Is launched to initial backers, and it was at CES this past month. So, you
Huh.
know, our increasingly snail's pace coverage of CES continues with the release of the Atari VCS. Oh,
That's true. I think we're going to develop a reputation around this. I think it should be a yearly tradition that we just deliver on these news super late.
exactly. Yes. Now, we're gonna dedicate like an episode or something like that to the VCS again. I really insist that we do because
I
it's
agree.
fascinating, and apparently for some people here that have their hands on it, it's more like a mini PC than an actual console.
Isn't it running like some kind of version of Ubuntu or Linux or
Yes, it's running a proprietary version of Linux with the option of running Windows 10. So
interesting?
very fascinating stuff, and I want to talk about it more on a future episode.
I want to get one for the purposes of reviewing it, and who knows, like actually having the hardware in front of us for the podcast would actually be pretty cool too.
It would be insanity, honestly. What's also insanity is what's going on with Tesla.
Okay, tell me more.
So, Tesla has agreed to do a full total recall on 134,951 Model S and Model X vehicles. The reason being that the touchscreen displays have a decent chance of failing.
Wow. And
And
we're not talking about like 2020, 2021 vehicles either. We're talking about the
so
Tesla models from a couple years
So the
ago.
art, so the article, which is from Reuters, again citing our sources, Reuters, um, the article claims that it is specifically the 2012 to 2018 Model S, and then the 2016 to 2018 Model X. This isn't to say that this couldn't be a potential issue going forward in the future. We don't really know that for sure, but these particular models have a decent chance of the touchscreen failing. And of course, if anyone here has been in a Tesla before, a lot of the guts of a Tesla and a lot of the stuff like that does rely on the touch display.
Interesting. I've never been inside of a Tesla, so I definitely would not know. Have you?
I have not been inside of a Tesla, but I have seen it in action. A YouTuber that I follow, CGP Grey, owns a Tesla and actually did a long road trip vlog with one. And so it was going a lot into like the features and a lot of the stuff that happens with these things.
Okay, I see. So you technically did get a bit of an insider's look from the outside.
Yes. And of course, Reuters is also saying that the touchscreen failures can pose significant safety issues, including the loss of rear view or backup camera images, exterior turn signal lighting, and windshield defogging and defrosting systems.
Oh, so that's all
So
operated by the same interface?
it's using the touch display in the middle of the car.
Ye-
That a lot. If the touchscreen doesn't work, if the display isn't working, you can't see a lot of those things.
Wow. But I
And,
do wonder,
again,
like,
that includes the ability to defrog or defrost the front windshield, which of course, say for example, in inclement weather like what we're experiencing right now would be a really, really not so ideal thing.
right, right. S-
Now, I think you're going to love why the touchscreens can fail like this.
Okay.
You were saying I need a drink of water. That's one thing that's nice about being a little remote here. I can drink some water. No one can call me out on it. um, so the thing about these touchscreens possibly failing may actually be because let me just double check here
Go for
because
it.
I have the article in front of me. Yes, yes. Tesla has provided confirmation that all units will inevitably fail given the memory device's finite storage capacity.
Wha-
So
How much storage are we talking about here?
They do not specify a number, but of course, Tesla cars often go through software updates,
That's true. Yeah.
which means that we are talking about a scenario here where the car updates itself so much that it runs out of space, it runs out of storage, and the touchscreen stops working.
I don't think that firmware like this would take up that much storage. So it's got to be a very small hard drive.
Let me find out using my own little Tech Summit podcast research station,
Ah,
aka my home PC.
yes. Which, by the way, features a Ryzen 9 3950X, 16 cores and 32 threads. And it also features an RTX 3070 Founders Edition with 64 gigs of RAM.
Of course, the build hasn't been documented and is on the Tech Summit Tech Summit YouTube channel.
Yes, it is on the Tech Summit Pod YouTube channel.
Tech Source Pod YouTube channel. Oh, I love this.
Okay, well, tell me more.
I typed in Tesla Model X storage space and I got 87.8 cubic feet.
What?
It's giving me the physical space, the physical storage.
Okay, we need like hard drive storage.
Capacity. I'm gonna go with capacity.
Okay, sure. I think it'll understand.
Nope, that still doesn't work here. All right.
Oh man. All right, I'm gonna
fine,
try
hard
my
drive.
end also. Let me see.
I got nothing. I got nothing.
You got nothing, really? Oh,
There's a Quora.
I did get like actually, and this is pretty hilarious. And this is mostly hilarious because I had no idea about this even being a thing. But you can indeed use external hard drives and SSDs with your Tesla Model 3, S, and more, according to this article from electric.co. And there's also forums.tesla.com, Sentry Mode recording on 2 terabyte external hard drive. So people have been doing this, which means that they can't expand the storage on it, which means that this should be something that the consumer could probably resolve on their own.
Probably, but at the same time, it is a little silly that this is happening at all. You know, you shouldn't really have to deal with that issue.
Yeah,
Um,
the car can
and of course,
definitely fit a bigger hard drive.
you know, this is sort of emphasizing how like for as great as it is to have all these technical innovations in automotive, you know, in vehicles, and it has to happen. It does have to happen, and a lot of this stuff can be very exciting. There can also be a lot of hiccups like this. You know, for the touch display to fail and lead to possible issues with safety, that's a serious problem. Now, Tesla has said that, you can just turn around and look behind you if the rear camera isn't showing anything. And you can manually defrost and defog your windows. But actually, it makes me wonder though, like, is the windshield wipers, is there a manual button for that though? Or are they suggesting that you go outside the car and wipe it down? Which, you can't really do when you're driving.
This isn't what I paid for. I mean, like, if I bought a Tesla, I'm expecting it to do everything for me. But this is still, like, thank you. Thank you for finding these news for me. Because
Yes, of course.
this is incredible. I have had a wonderful time tonight. Oh, Jesus.
Now, this is of course also hot off the heels of the Tesla Model S, I believe, getting a bit of a facelift recently, which includes, I believe, the turn signals being a touchscreen display. Having to use a touchscreen for the turn signals, which I don't know if those include haptic feedback or not. They have
should.
to. They
They
better.
should.
Otherwise, that's a huge problem.
No, yeah, because then, like,
Um,
I mean, how else would you really know that you're signaling? I mean, I guess that it could still show it on the dashboard, like as it would on a traditional car. It'll show you the
yeah, but that doesn't
signaling.
matter though. You need haptic feedback for that. It's just bad user interface, bad UI. Our professor told us this.
Yes, he
It is
did. He
bad
did.
UI if you do not include haptic feedback with something as vital as turn signals.
Yeah, I mean, that
Granted,
is true. It's
if you're
really
transitioning from
improved
a BMW to a Tesla, they basically don't exist for you anyway. But come on.
that. Yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
like the haptic feedback on most cars is just going to be that click that you're going to get whenever you trigger any kind of turn signals.
That's still a lot better than nothing at all.
Well, yeah. I mean, absolutely. So, like, I guess well, like the best way that they would be able to emulate this on their cards would be by adding haptic feedback, or just I don't know. I'm not gonna say like a cheap vibration motor because here we're talking about Tesla. Like, there's no excuse for that, or for low storage capacity. I mean, there also has to be a way, like within the dashboard or something, where you should be able to like optimize your storage to some capacity.
Yeah. Or just have more storage, I'd honestly say.
That too,
Um,
like something that will actually last you 10 years or something.
right. And of course, there's some other stuff. One of the bigger things that I thought was rather interesting in the facelift also was the steering wheel was completely changed to a more kind of rectangular, almost Formula One looking steering wheel, which
Huh.
there's a reason why those steering wheels usually, like, those cars with those steering wheels, there's a reason why they usually aren't street legal. And that's because if, once again, going back to the inclement weather here, you're in like the snow or like just a frozen tundra whatsoever, and you end up slipping on some black ice. Black ice is extremely dangerous. You spin out of control because of that black ice, and you need to grip the steering wheel, or like maybe you hit a pothole and you lose grip of the steering wheel, and then you grip for something and you just get a bunch of air because the steering wheel is not a perfect round circle. Um,
Right.
that's it. You're dead. You are presumably dead because you just lost control of the vehicle, and because of the steering wheel's shape, you are unable to regain control of it.
I see.
That's a huge problem. That's why the cars that usually have that are A, not street legal, B, driven by professionals only who already know how to handle these things when they're in that kind of situation in a way that a regular driver may not be able to.
I guess in like racetracks and things like that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, again, we're talking about Formula One cars with steering wheels like that.
Right. So, yeah, like this is very interesting. I mean, if they can somehow manage to pass the legislation to make this legal, like not obviously as it currently stands, but just like implement this new steering wheel in a way that would actually comply with uh like with the current street laws and things like that. Just hoping for the best here because again, well, I don't have any stock invested in Tesla, but I do want to see them succeed, right?
Of course, Tesla succeeding is a relatively good thing. A lot more electric cars adoption, which that's the other thing too. I think I don't know if we mentioned it in the last podcast, but General Motors has already announced that all of their cars are going to be fully electric by 2035.
Which is great. We just
It
need to
is.
have more electric charging stations at gas stations.
There's that, and of course, 2035 is a ways away, and I would personally prefer if it was sooner than that. Um,
Same, but I mean, we're not the ones working on that, unfortunately, so we don't really know how hard it would be for that to be the case. Hello? Did I lose you? Oh, I think I did. Oh no. Hello? Ah, okay. And unfortunately, looks like Christopher is gone for the night. So this is the beauty of going with Discord instead. But with that said, considering that we have pretty much covered at every topic set for tonight, I kind of just wanted to say thank you very much for jumping into tonight's live stream. Tonight was certainly a lot of fun since I found out a lot of very hilarious and interesting news, but also some sad ones along the way. But either way, Christopher, if you're somehow listening, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast, even though we were so far away. And I'm sorry that we had these connection issues over here. But with that said, this has been Francisco, and I will be speaking on behalf of Christopher here. He's going to be saying goodnight now, and I will be doing the same. For when it comes to social media and everything of the like, and in case you're listening on other platforms, links to that are going to be down in the description, but you're also going to see them right on the screen if you're watching on YouTube. But with that said, again, good night, and until next time.